Hi everyone, this is Diane. And in this first video, I just wanted to go over some energy basics and maybe help change our perception about how energy works. And I know that there are so many empaths, highly sensitive and intuitive people out there that are really being impacted by the non-physical energy, but they don't understand how it's all working. So I just go back to the basics and start there because that's what I did when I got started, to kind of understand how all this energy was impacting me. So first thing is everything is energy. How oftentimes do we forget this, that everything is simply energy? Energy is like a life force all around us, and it's just vibrating energy or vibrating atoms at different frequency. And we're perceiving some of these through our five senses, but a majority of them we're not. Um, so starting with like the vibrating energy, like we don't think about like a wall is vibrating energy, but it is. It's just anything that's matter is vibrating so slow that we can actually perceive it, and have have an experience with it. So that's all that matter is just slowly vibrating energy, but at a very big concept, we have to change our perception and realize that everything around us is energy. And for me, I really needed to have like numbers to kind of identify things with. So I'm just going to throw this out there because it did really help me. When we think about like things moving and having a vibration and a frequency. So something that's moving at 50 vibrations per second is called 50 hertz. So oftentimes when we hear about hertz and vibration, we're like, what is that? But so if something is moving at 50 times per second, that's called 50 hertz. But we are so wrapped up in our physical world. We don't perceive it as vibrating energy. We just know that we're experiencing this in our physical world. But if we can step back to change our perception just a little bit to understand how we experience this physical world, how is that working with the energy? So when we touch something, we have nerve endings in our fingers, and we'll touch something, and the sensory nerves on our finger are connected to our nervous system, and the message is sent up through the nervous system to our brain to interpret on what we're touching. And sometimes that millisecond that it takes for us to, if we touch something hot, a lot of times you don't pull your finger away right away. That's the pause of the message being sent to your brain, like, hey, that's hot, move your finger. So it's just interpreting the type of energy we're feeling, and we'll experience if it's hot, cold, bumpy, smooth, and so on. It's just interpreting the vibrating energy, just like our eyes. We're seeing all around us, we're seeing vibrating energy. It enters through our eyes and goes to the optic nerve, and the nervous system takes it to the brain to be interpreted on what we're seeing. And so like when we're perceiving different colors just have different frequencies. So it's all just light, but it's being perceived as the various frequencies on why we see things in different color. Now, why sunlight is so healing, and if you follow me at all, you know that being outside is my thing. But sunlight is, we consider and we see it as white light, but white light contains all the other spectrums of light. So that's what's really cool about the natural healing sunlight that many of us enjoy. But back to the vibrating atoms, if something is vibrating, a lot of times there's a vibration to it. And so that the atoms, vibrating atoms, that sensory of things moving enters our eardrum through our ear and hits the auditory nerve, and that's message is sent to the brain. And then our brain tells us, what we're hearing. If it's, words, it's interpreting that for us. If it's sound, frequency and pitch also. So it's picking up on those other aspects of the vibrating energy. Taste, we have the nerve endings on our tongue to tell us if things are hot, cold, sweet, sour, bitter, and so on. And just like for when we touch something, many times we've eaten something and you're like, oh, that's really good. But then a split second later, you're like, oh, nope. That pause between the two events is the time it takes to go through the nervous system for our brain to interpret that. Now, our sense of smell works just a little bit differently. And many people have heard this, that when you smell something, it goes to the limbic portion of your brain. So there's really the time factor, and the nervous system works a little bit different there. And the limbic system of our brain is really for like it's a center for like emotions and memory. So this is really cool to work with for like if you're working on your emotions, and something from your memory. So how oftentimes have you smelled something, you're taken back to another time, almost instantaneously, and you don't know why. Some people, it's like smelling an apple pie. They think of their grandmother or an aunt maybe cooking, or maybe smelling popcorn at a fair, or smelling popcorn at the mall. But then you remember the smell popcorn from the fair when you were a child, or something like that. And this is also why we use smells like herbs and essential oils to work with our emotions. And so if we've got some of those deep buried emotions, sometimes we can use the oils and the herbs and the smells to bring those to the surface and help heal those. But so now that's how our nervous system is constantly picking up messages from the energy vibrating around us to help us make sense of our physical world. But what are some things we can begin to understand that are very non-physical in nature, but affecting things in our physical world? So think about a radio station. You know that the radio station's over there, and your car or your listening device is here, and there's a wave of energy going between the two. You can't see it, but you know it's very real because you're hearing the music or the podcast or the talk show that you're listening to. And key fobs are another one. We have a physical, low vibrating energy of matter with a key fob in our car. But if we trigger one to the other, there's a short distance frequency between the two. This is non-physical energy that's very much impacting something in our physical world. So what else can we think about? Think about when we walk into a room. Oftentimes there's other people there, or events taking place. Many times the energy of the room we can feel. Walk into a room where there's going to be a bunch of layoffs, that is just being announced, there's going to be a subtle lower vibrational energy. If you walk into a room where there's a party, a celebration going on, that vibration is going to be higher, and you're going to feel that energy and be able to pick up on everyone's really having a good time. How about different spaces? Oftentimes, like if there's a place, many of us have a place that we can go and it helps us feel better, maybe by a lake or a stream. For some people, it may be a concert, by the invigorating energy, certain places. So all of those places are carrying non-physical energy that we're picking up on. So what is that? What is that called? You may have heard this. It's called like the subtle energy body. Things we're getting impacting our energy body, but it's so subtle, we can't perceive it with our five senses, but we get very much impacted by that. So I really needed to kind of bridge that gap a little bit more. I'd like to have science. I needed science when I first started, so you may need it too, so I'll add that here. But one of the laws is the law of divine oneness. And this is just saying that everything and everyone is connected, and nothing is truly separated from anything else. And all energy is impacting the other energy around it. So that is a lot. That's a lot of information when you think about it, that everything's really connected and everything's impacting everything else. But again, for our intuitive, empath, and highly sensitive friends out there, this can really help you begin to grasp on why you are, feeling overstimulated in your nervous system, because all the energy that you can't see is really impacting you. So one more law I'd like to get about is just the law of vibration. Everything is made up of the energy and has that frequency. And we said how it's all impacting other things. So I just wanted to bring in one more example of how this works at a very fine level, in a very physical matter, is if you strike one tuning fork and hold it next to another tuning fork, that tuning fork that was not struck is begin to move. Again, this is another example of how energy that is around us or next to us can be impacting the other energy. So now we need to go on to states of matter, because everything's just, matter. We were talking about the wall being matter, but we also talk non-physical. So Einstein's famous equation of E equals mc squared. We've heard it. But what does it mean? Well, what this is saying is energy is equal to the mass times the speed of light squared. So what this is saying is if you take an apple and you move it at the speed of light squared, it would turn into pure energy. So this is it's hard to conceive. I mean, like you think like, how does an apple turn into pure energy? Well, it's moving through space and time and transferring. But what's something that we can use in this example in our physical world that we can very much grasp as a substance? About water. Okay, water we know is a liquid. It comes out of the faucet. We drink it. We see it moving in a stream. We see it falling from the sky. Water is a liquid. But if you froze that liquid into a 1 foot by 1 foot block and made it a solid and you drop that on your foot, oh, it very much would be considered matter because it hurt and it hurt, pretty ouch. But if we take that block of ice and you put it in a pan, it would melt and it would turn back to the state of water. And then if you continue to heat it, it would boil and turn into vapor. So here we have a very real substance in our physical world that we can comprehend of how things just change forms from a vapor, to a solid or a liquid to a solid and back again. It can easily just transfer forms. And that's what Einstein's equation was saying, is how things can interchange very easily. And it's just interesting to note that we as humans are, 60 to 70% water? Pretty wild, huh? Okay, but one more thing. So science was they kind of started with Einstein's equation from the way I understand it. And they were looking at like that speed of light squared thing. And there may be other science behind this, but what they did was the study was, now that they can test things at a quantum level, at a very subparticle, they keep studying the particles getting smaller and smaller. So they took an atom and they split it, and they sent part of the atom that way and part of the atom that way. So this atom was split. And then they wanted to see the delay between the movement between the two atoms, and there wasn't one. So they stimulated one of the atoms and the other one moved as well, but there was no delay in the movement. So what this has now been called and been repeated many times in laboratories is its entanglement. So what this is saying is once atoms are associated, they can't be separated. So things that impact us, from things that are separated from us are still being impacted. And a perfect example for this is many people out there, moms and their children. How many times have mom intuitively known, because, those atoms of the family unit, and even sometimes for friends, something happens to somebody, if you've been very close to that person, you know that you're going to be impacted by their energy. So, but that goes much further on much higher scales than what we normally perceive. So a lot of information, but stepping back and changing our perception now is, why does all this vibrating energy matter? Well, the vibrating energy is like, it's a part of who we are and what is affecting us in a very real way through our physical, emotional, and mental body. But this information is key for our friends that are the empaths, the highly sensitive, intuitive people, because once they can begin to grasp on why they're feeling overwhelmed so much of the time, it may be this non-physical energy that's impacting them. So once we can just remember that everything is vibrating energy, which is the vibrating atoms. Some are perceiving with our five senses, and many of them were not. And we can truly begin to see how that energy is impacting our energy body. So now your homework for today, yes, there's a little homework, and not just for today, but if you care to do this, and I ask you to participate a little bit, because you can begin to really see how energy is affecting you. Grab a notebook from the dollar store if you have a steno pad from work or whatever, but keep a little log and pay attention to some things. Wear a red shirt. How do you feel when you wear that red shirt? Wear a blue shirt. See how you feel. When you leave for the grocery store, see how you're sensing. How do you feel? And then when you get back from the store, if you've been, interacted with a whole bunch of other human energies and things and stuff like that, write down how you feel. Begin to be aware of the energy around you that's impacting you. So hopefully this provided you a little information on the physical and the non-physical world. And stay tuned, because in the next video, we're going to dive into the frequency of our human body and how our physical body can, is being affected by the energy of the world around us in more of a way to affect our physical health in a very real way. So thanks for joining me today. Hopefully you got some great information from this, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, namaste.